Welcome to New York's number two sports show. Let's discuss the New York Rangers 2025-2026 opening night roster. And as we know, Mike Sullivan is the new New York Rangers head coach. And so with that, there will be changes as far as the way that the team plays, and hopefully their identity is one of a tougher team to play against. I guess right at the top, I'll say that I think that this Ranger team is more than capable of making the playoffs. And my prediction is that they will find a way in. Nothing would surprise me, though, with this Ranger team, because look, as much as there have been changes, still a lot of the foundational members are still here that have been here for the last 2, 3 coaching regimes. And in those cases, specifically with Gerard Gallant and Peter Laviolette, year one was successful. And so I think that if they stay healthy, I don't think it's going to be nearly as successful as those ones were, right? I mean, those were teams that ended up reaching the Eastern Conference Final. In the case of the 24 Laviolette Rangers, that was a team that won the President's Trophy. Like, I do not see that happening at all. Now, look, the Gallant one was legitimately a surprise. Like, that, the fact that they did what they did, no one could have expected that. Like, that was a team that had a good amount of regular season success, and of course, made a run, and we're not that far from making the Cup final. But I definitely have my concerns with this team, and it feels like, as much as there is some transitioning going on with the roster, and like the fact that JT Miller is now the captain of this Ranger team, and that's a change in and of itself. There still is a lot of the players, that have been here for a while. In some cases, it's a good thing. In some cases, there's not a whole lot that can be done about it because of contractual reasons. And in other cases, there's going to be, free agency that's coming up very soon. And so we still don't know what's going to happen. So, but I think in this Eastern Conference, the Rangers can very easily be a top 8 team. As far as the division goes, and we're going to get into the roster, but wanted to kind of give more general big picture thoughts first. Look, Carolina's going to be towards the top, right? Like, that's the way it's been for a while, and I don't see that changing. Like, they're a really, really good regular season team. The New Jersey Devils, like, there is a lot of talent there, right? As much as a Ranger fan, you don't want to say that, it's true. And so the Rangers can certainly compete for a top 3 spot in the Metropolitan Division. And if not, I think that one of the wildcard spots is there for them to have. So if they miss the playoffs, I would call it a disappointment. However, like, there is a world where this thing kind of goes off the rails. And with Mike Sullivan teams, like, one thing that stood out to me, obviously he won 2, led 2 cups. Obviously helps having Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang and so on and so forth. But to be fair to Sullivan, that was a team that was, getting knocked out pretty early in the playoffs for a lot of years. Obviously the Penguins won the Cup in 2009, and then you have about 5-6 years where they were, I think in each case, I think they made the playoffs in all of those cases, but really didn't do a whole lot once they got there. And so Sullivan really did a great job of turning things around, leading into winning cups in 16 and 17. But I would say in the later run of Sullivan and the Penguins, that was a team that really, really was not good at holding leads. Again, like, personnel has a lot to do with this. It's not fair to say, hey, that's on him. But like, I think with Sullivan, the thing I'm looking forward to the most, again, is more of an attitude change than anything, and really holding players accountable. And, but do I see Mike Sullivan and the Rangers being this relationship that lasts a long time? I don't. I don't, unfortunately. It doesn't mean that there can't be success early on, right? That's the hope for me, is that enough can be squeezed out of this team that maybe they're able to do something in year 1 or year 2, but it's been a theme. And, again, they are trying to weed some of the players out. They've done so. And it's not fair to pin it solely on these guys. I mean, the key departures this year, of course, were Keandre Miller and Chris Kreider. But I think that Um, Sullivan has his work cut out for him. The roster has its flaws, and let's discuss the roster. And like we've already discussed, like as far as the coaching staff, David Quinn is back, and again, to me, that's a very interesting dynamic. The fact that Quinn was the head coach of this team just as recently as 2021, so you don't see that too often. He'll really handle the defensemen and the power play. Joe Sacco, and all these guys have a good relationship and have worked together before, as far as Sullivan, Quinn, Sacco, going back to their college days. But Sacco will work with the forwards and the penalty kill. Um, but yeah, let's get the easy one out of the way right here, and that's goaltending. Right, yet again, it's Igor Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick. And look, I think for both of them, I think that they're looking for a little bit of a bounce back. Now, again, with Quick, it's like I don't, I don't know, right? Like he is 39 years old and was not nearly as good this past season as he was the year before. Not to say that Jonathan Quick doesn't have it in him to really put up some spectacular games. Like he's almost, there's ups and downs with Jonathan Quick. Like he can still steal you a game every now and then, but then there's also games where it can just absolutely implode on him. So he's turning 40 this season. I don't think there's a whole lot much longer to Jonathan Quick's amazing career, but that's the duo. And look, like that, despite the fact that I think last year wasn't great, like Igor, there were stretches where Igor was really good. And at the end of the day, Igor is the backbone of this team. Like there's still for me high hopes for Igor Shesterkin. And I think that if the Rangers are to be successful, he's going to be a big reason why. This out of the forwards, defensemen, and the goalies, as it tends to be with the Rangers, it's kind of the spot that you worry about the least. And there is continuity there, as this is now year 3 of the Shesterkin Quick combination. With Jonathan Quick, obviously he knows his role. I think obviously helps. He grew up a Ranger fan, but he knows what it is. But again, he was not nearly as good this past season as he was in 23-24. But that's your goaltending situation, pretty cut and dry. And Igor, let's just say he'll probably get 55 to 60 of the 82. Maybe I'll go further. Maybe I'll say 55 to 65 if they really want to push it. But he's going to get about 75% of the game, 75 to 80% of the games, if both goalies are healthy. Let's now go to the defenseman. This is not a great unit. Now, here's the good news. Bringing in Vladislav Gavrikov, assuming he's going to pair up with Adam Fox, is going to help a lot. Gavrikov is, without a doubt, the best defenseman that Adam Fox has played with. Now, look, there was, believe it or not, some of the Ryan Lindgren Fox years were actually good. It really kind of took a turn towards the end, but that was a pretty good pair. There had been some stability. Now, was some of it a bit overrated? Yes, right? Like the K'Andre Miller-Trouba pair. There were good times, but there was a lot of bad times. But the look of the defense is very different. And bringing in Gavrikov, I believe, will be helpful. Now, how will that contract age? That's another story, right? But for the here and now, that's a pair to be excited about. But here's the thing. I don't feel good at all about basically pairs 2 and 3. And it almost makes you think you may get to a point where you may have to break Gavrikov and Fox up just to provide a little bit more balance. That is possible. At the same time, though, I don't mind giving Gavrikov and Fox heavy minutes, right? 25 minutes a night type stuff. If you're really in a mode of trying to win hockey, games, obviously you have to be cognizant of the whole season and not burning them out. But the way the structure is, you're going to be relying upon those two heavily. And I'm hoping for Adam Fox that he can have a much better season than he had last year, right? And with Gavrikov as his defensive partner, there's really no excuse for that not to be the case. So, again, the problem here is the depth of the defenseman. So let's just say, for intensive purposes, that the second pair, and to me, it's somewhat, it can go either way. But right now, it looks like the number 2 pair is Carson Soucy and Mo Borgen. That's pretty scary. Now, these two played together in Seattle, not very successfully. They were not together with the Rangers last year much because, again, remember, it was mostly K'Andre Miller with Will Borgen. There may have been a few instances where Susie was with Borgen, but not much. But again, I'm not a big fan of Carson Susie. I like Will Borgen, I do, but like even to be fair, there, like to me, he's more on the second pair, third pair borderline. He's no clear cut number two pair guy. Now, I'm going to bring up the third pair, and that maybe in some ways will get more second pair minutes. It's Urho Vakanainen and Braden Schneider. Now, we saw those two play together a lot last year. Again, it's not a pair to be overly excited about. When I look back at Ninen, yeah, like in the right situation, he can be a fine third pair defenseman, but I also think in a lot of teams, he could be like your number 7, right? Like Vakanainen is probably more of a 6-7 defenseman. I mean, Carson Susini is nowhere near top, a top 4 guy. So again, that's kind of the slew, right? Like whatever you want to say, right? And maybe there's times when it ends up being Susie with Schneider and then Vakanainen with Borgen, right? I could see if they want to stick with Gavrikov Fox, I could see interchanging those 4. And the idea of Brady Schneider on the left side, which I think we thought maybe they go Schneider Borgen, I don't see that happening much. I don't. But the way that the layout is here, I think if Scott Morrow made the team, that kind of gets into more of this. Matthew Robertson makes the team as the 7th defenseman. And on the one hand, you know what? Good for Matthew Robertson. This is a guy that was drafted by the New York Rangers all the way back in 2019 as a second round pick and finally made his debut in the last 2 games of the regular season last year. I think Matthew Robertson, he is the clear-cut 7th defenseman. Not to say that he couldn't find his way in the lineup. Like I said, they're like a guy like Vakanainen or Susie. Like those aren't guys that are like if they had their struggles in either case, like I think like they could be healthy scratches for sure. And so, in some ways, having a left side defenseman as the 7th D man makes sense. Scott Morrow was someone that I think a lot of people projected to possibly make the team. The good news here is, and I'm fine with him not making it, right? Like if he was going to make it, he should be playing every day. Now he gets top pair minutes in Hartford, and he's more of an offensive minded defenseman. And I think that we'll see him at some point, somehow, some way. If he's healthy, it's bound to be that I think Scott Morrow is going to get some time with the big club this season. But at the same time, I don't really have much of a problem with that decision. It worries me, right? Like I think by and large, it's the weakness of the team. And Robertson really probably shouldn't be a 7th defenseman. Like, again, I think it's a good story. The fact that he, again, has kind of stayed in the organization and has earned this role. But I also think it speaks to a little bit of a lack of depth. And we'll see what it is. Again, like Susie Borgen kind of scares me. Like I think Vakanainen and Schneider as a third pair in a nutshell is okay if you had a stronger second. But who knows? Vakanainen and Schneider, they might play more than Susie and Borgen. I think we're going to see Braden Schneider get second unit power play time, which you haven't seen before. Again, we know how much the first unit dominates, but yeah, I think between all these defensemen, I think that they're going to basically play in both. I think they're going to play mostly in both situations. I look at it as this: Adam Fox. We don't really need to see him as much on the penalty kill, right? I think you have enough coverage there where, like, yes, he can be out there, but I don't know. It might be smart to give him a lot of even strength time and power play time, and maybe limit those penalty kill minutes, because I think you want to get everyone sort of their run here. And I think that Fox, given the layout, not that I trust some of these guys, I don't think there's that need to force them on the penalty kill. But again, those are my thoughts on the defensemen. There's definitely some concerns there for sure. Now let's go to the forwards. This is where more interesting conversation comes in the way of who made the team and who didn't. And I have some issues with some of the decisions. Let's just more start with sort of at the top and the things that are more obvious with the forward lines. Basically, the top 2 lines are going to be as you predicted. I believe that's going to be the opening night lines. Line 1, and again, it's somewhat semantics as far as line 1, line 2. Look at it as top 6. JT Miller centering Will Cooley and Mika Zibanejad, and then Vincent Trocheck centering Panarin and Lafreniere. Now, we've seen the Panarin, Trocheck, Lafreniere line for the last couple of years. It was really good in 24. It was not so good this past season. basically what you're going to see now, for the most part, is an interchanging of those six. I like Miller with Zibanejad because I felt like Zibanejad played the best one. He was on the wing with Miller. Now, as much as having Zibanejad at center, in theory, give you some pretty solid center depth, I don't think Nick is quite as effective as a center at this point of his career. And so, for the betterment of him, and in a lot of ways the team, because look, the fact of the matter is that they are kind of weak on the right wing. So that's what that line is going to be. And look, like I think you get a lot of sort of physicality with Cooley and Miller together, and it could give some room for Zibanejad, who doesn't quite bring that physicality. So, but again, at the same time, look, I'm also fine with interchanging, and if that Trocheck line with Panarin and Lafreniere is not effective, I'm very much okay with mixing and matching between those six. Now, who would be the next guy kind of up? It's a good question. I guess that's where it's going to lead me to Conor Sheary, who signed a professional tryout, PTO, and he makes the team, as it turns out. And in some ways, it kind of reminds me of a couple of years with Jimmy Vesey, who was on a PTO and made it, but that one felt more secure. And I felt like Vesey really earned it. And ended up kind of really having a few nice years in his kind of second run with the Rangers. Two really solid seasons. And then last year, not as much. But yeah, it is Sheary who makes the team. For me, I'm so used to call Connor, everyone called him Conor Sheary. And if the spelling goes that way. So again, I'm like, I want to get it right. He kind of, made the correction that it's Sheary. So apologize if I kind of go back and forth on that one, but he would actually, in a lot of ways, I think be the guy that might slot into the top six if someone got hurt or if they wanted to switch things around. But he was decent in training camp. He was, but like, he's not someone that as a Ranger fan you can be overly excited about. Like, and look, I understand like it can't all be the kids. It can't all be. But I think what ends up happening here is this. Let's like now kind of discuss. Let's go to the third line. Actually, no. Let's go to the fourth line. That one seems to be kind of set in stone. I think it's going to be Carrick centering Edstrom and Rempe. And not to say that won't change. Not to say that, who knows, like if Edstrom could move up in the lineup, right? It seems like Matt Rempe might get second power play unit time, which is kind of interesting. But like I think that was a line that we saw a lot last year, which had some success. And I think that's what it's going to be. So then you sort of have like this, and again, look at it as the bottom. I got to remind myself, look at it as the bottom six. Like, look, that Carrick line may end up getting the third most minutes, more than the line I'm about to bring up. And here is now where I want to bring up one of the bright spots. We'll get back to Sheary. Noah Laba makes the team as essentially the third line center or fourth line center, however you want to look at it. He was a fourth round pick in 2022, and a lot of people felt like he was a dark horse to make the team, and they were right. And he ends up winning the award for top rookie in training camp, and well-deserved. Like, really happy that he made the team. Like, that would have been a shame, and fans would have been upset if he didn't make it. So right now, he's ticketed to be in there, centering probably Sheary and Taylor Radish, which I don't love the look of that line. Taylor Radish was probably a mistake by Chris Drury. See, the thing with Sheary is it's a league minimum deal. It's a 1 year, $775K deal, right? So like, as far as that goes, there's not a whole lot of risk there. And so I'm fine with it. But with Taylor Radish, he's making double that for 2 years, $1.5 million. Last year's with the Capitals was pretty solid on a good Capital team, right? A well-coached Spencer Carberry Capital team where he played 80 games, did a fine job. He has had a 20-goal season with the Blackhawks. That was a bad Blackhawk team. So you had to take that a little bit with a grain of salt. He's been on the Lightning, Blackhawks, and Caps. Bounced around a little bit. Still relatively young, currently 27 years old. But he's someone for me, like, look, unfortunately, he made the team, and it was sort of a lock that he would based on the contract. He did not play well in preseason. To me, he's got to be in that sort of healthy scratch mix. And the healthy scratch mix is as follows. He is part of that. He should be part of that. Now, look, I think it seems like he's going to play opening night again. Laba centering, Sheary, and Radish. And so right now, the healthy scratches would appear to be Juuso Parssinen, and Johnny Brodzinski. So right now, it looks like the Rangers are going to be going with 14 forwards. Now that could change too. Like, who knows? But to me, it's very interchangeable. And that's assuming that we want to say that the Carrick line stays as playing like every, that those three are in every night. But I don't know that to be true, right? Because a guy like Matt Rempe, we've seen like he can be a healthy scratch, like depending on the opponent. Now, I want him to get, every night run, but I just don't know that that's necessarily going to be the case. So there's just a lot of iffy players. And so who ends up kind of being part of that third line? That's what I'll call it that for now. I want Laba to be for the foreseeable future. But with him, I think, look, I'm not the biggest Juuso Parssinen fan, but with him, he's still pretty young. He was okay in the preseason. He wasn't bad. Laba was just better than him, right? Like Laba it was between Laba and Parssinen, really, realistically, for that third line center. Sure, could Johnny Brodzinski have gotten it? Yeah. But Brodzinski's more of kind of a versatile, ideally 13th type of forward, really. And so Laba went over Parssinen, but I would have no problem moving Parssinen over to wing and having it be a little bit more of a tough line to go against. I just don't like the mix. It's a weird mix of everyone, hey, this is the line that's kind of open and we're just going to throw people together. And, Sheary's going to make it based on kind of his veteran status, and Raj is going to make it based on his contract, and Laba's going to make it because he actually earned it. So I don't know. There's not much of an identity there currently. Not to say there can't be, but I guess I'm just not that bullish right now on Radish and to some degree Sheary either. Sheary was on the Lightning last year for 5 games. Look, clearly John Cooper and company did not exactly, I don't know, like it wasn't going to work there. And so they basically put him in the minors and he was there for the rest of the season. And again, I think that Sheary legitimately, he played pretty well in the exhibition games. It's not like it's completely ridiculous, but again, and I don't want to call nepotism. I'm not, but like Conor Sheary is Mike Sullivan's nephew-in-law. And obviously they do, and not even to that point, they had the experience from Pittsburgh. Like it is nice to have that winning veteran guy. The Rangers don't have much of that. Like Jonathan Quick's that, but he's a backup goalie, right? So it's not really going to go so far where, Sheary at least does have cup winning experience. So again, I'm trying to kind of find reasons. As far as players that didn't make it on the forward end, Brett Berard, he was kind of the last cut. And he would be a guy that I would have wanted to see over a Radish, over a Sheary, over a lot of those guys I mentioned, even Brodzinski, just, and again, it's easy to get caught in the let it all be young players trap. And that's where I am glad that Laba made it, and it's got to be a little bit of a mix, but I think Berard kind of got the short end of the stick. I'm fine with Gabe Perreault not making it. The good news there was he looked pretty good. And I think that we'll see him later on, but Perreault, very okay with him not making it. The real disappointment, Brennan Othman. He was a pretty early cut and deservedly so. I hope that he can kind of turn things around, but his stock has dropped in a major, major way. But of course, those are kind of the 3 big forward names you're looking at in Hartford at the moment. Perreault, Berard, Othman on the defensive side, Scott Morrow. There's some other interesting names that we can discuss, but I think we'll save that for a later date. But yeah, that's your look at the roster. And again, I think this really it's a team that I think it's going to be very interesting on the Panarin front. Just to close here, he is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. Like, to me, if the Rangers are not in the playoff hunt come deadline time, he's got to be traded. To me, that's a no-brainer if it gets bad. Now, the thing is, if they're in the playoff mix and likely to make it, then of course you're not going to trade them. But that is going to be interesting to me as far as what does that contract negotiation look like with Artemi Panarin. He is the one big UFA the Rangers have on this roster. Other than that, there's not a whole lot else. It's really Carson Soucy, Jonathan Quick, and Johnny Brodzinski. So not a whole lot there, but Panarin's a big one, of course. So, and also I want to mention Panarin and JT Miller were both dealing with injuries. So there could be a little bit of a slow start there. Panarin didn't play any of the exhibition games. Miller might have played 1, 2 max, but I think it might have just been 1. So we'll see. A lot of pressure will be on some of the bigger names, right? The Foxes, the Shesterkins, Zibanejad, Panarin, Miller, Lafreniere. I mean, you need a lot more from him. He was a big disappointment last season. So very curious to see how they do. I hope that it's a good opening night. Look, last year, ironically, Rangers at the Penguins was one of the brighter moments, even though the score was misleading. The Rangers pummeled Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. Now here, it's going to be Sullivan versus Dan Muse, who Dan Muse is going to be the head coach of Penguins. He was one of the assistant coaches under Peter Laviolette. So kind of a swap, not so much a one-for-one swap because Muse wasn't the head coach of the Rangers, but you get what I'm saying. And so some interesting storylines. It will be a nationally televised game. It will also be at the same time as Yankees Blue Jays game 3. So similar to last year, where I believe the Rangers opening night was during Yankees Royals ALDS, it kind of takes a little bit of a back seat. But it seems like the Yankee season is unfortunately ending pretty soon. And so the Rangers will be at the forefront of things. And it's actually a pretty busy week coming up. They got 4 games in, I want to say 6 nights with Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. So they'll be, kind of hitting the ground running. You'll see, probably Jonathan Quick maybe in that one of those back-to-back games, Saturday, Sunday, in all likelihood. But hoping Rangers can get up to a good start. They did last year, and then things kind of tailed off. But of course, with that, you had the whole Jacob Trouba storyline. Things were kind of a mess last year there. But I'm hoping that with a little bit of a new leadership group, a new head coach, that they can right the ship a bit and not let things get out of hand. Going to be interesting to me. They're a bubble type team that I think will ultimately make it in the Eastern Conference. But, they need to stay healthy as well to make that happen. I don't love the depth on this team overall. But I wouldn't say it's so much a very much different looking team from the offseason. It's more so a lot of the trades that happened last season, right? It's a very much different looking team than a year ago, more so than it is from the end of last season. So here we are, 2025, 2026. Rangers season is upon us. This is the opening night roster. I'm sure things will change over time, but looking forward to the season. Hoping the Rangers can get off to a good start. It'll be opening night, home against the Pittsburgh Penguins.